Hello, family. Welcome to Gem Talks. This is Marcel, aka Gem, and thank you for taking the time to check out my podcast. Gem Talks is all about taking everyday life issues and challenges and just looking at it from a more empowering and motivating way. So stick around, guys. Keep checking in, and let's keep talking about it. Hello, family. Welcome back to another episode of Gem Talk. This is Marcel, aka Gem. And thank you for taking the time to check us out on another episode. I am here today with my beautiful guest, Miss Rashima.
Hello.
Miss Rashima, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having
telling
me.
us your story today.
Thank you for
Tell us a
having
little
me.
bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Rashima. I been in Georgia 17 years. Came here, met my husband, and started my life out here in Georgia, and I've been on a journey.
Okay.
I've been on a ride.
Life is a journey. Life is a journey.
It really is.
So in today's episodes, guys, we are going to be talking about suicide. So many of you have been through this. It is one of those situations that you get a loss for words. You don't know how to handle it. It is something that gives you a gut punch. And my beautiful friend here, Rashima, she had to experience that personally several years ago. And so tell us a little bit about that story. Tell us what happened.
Well, my husband, calls me up one day and tells me that he's not going to be here when I come home. And for clarity, I asked, "What do you mean?" And he told me that he was not going to be here at all in life, that he was taking his life, and he wanted to do so before I came home. So I stayed on the phone with my husband in an effort to seek help, to find someone who will go over and stop him from taking his life. But he was determined to do what he wanted to do. So it took me by surprise. That morning I spoke with my husband as normal. He would talk me to work. We would be on the phone until I got to work, and he asked me what I wanted for dinner, what did I want for him to cook for dinner. So, it took me by total surprise because I actually look forward to going home to have a meal with my husband. Wow. But unfortunately, he decided that he wasn't going to be there when I got home.
Wow. So what led up to that? What happened? How did you get to this moment? What did you think happened that led to this moment?
Well, my husband was a transmission rebuilder, and he started out building transmissions at the age of 14. He built his first transmission at the age of 14. And that was just his life, I can name several things that could have gone wrong with my husband, but he just never talked about what was wrong, So I still have questions myself, but I know that during that time, my husband was he was well-to-do. He was like the best transmission and one of the best in the state of Georgia, and he was one of the highest paid rebuilders. And as time went on, I noticed his hands were starting to give him trouble. Then he was losing relatives back to back. His father, his cousin really took a toll on him when he passed away. And then financial, but I hate to think that it was, more financial, because my husband was, suicide was one thing that I never saw for my husband. Yeah. I never saw that for my husband. He was strong. He was tough, so I never saw that. I never saw it coming.
Yeah. And I could say the same, because I knew him, and he had a big bravado.
Oh, God.
And had a love for life.
Yes.
And I would take my car to him to get it fixed. And he's always trying to give me a discount. And I'm always having like, you don't
generous.
have to give me a discount.
I'm
patroning you. I don't need a discount.
Yeah.
But he always tried to give me a discount. So and that was his nature. And he had this big bravado. Yeah. So I definitely didn't see that coming too. But I know that you guys had your own business.
We had our own business. We were in business for 12 years. And
did you think that played? Because I know once you closed the business, once that went on the ground, did you think that played into his psyche?
I think, like I said, there's so many things that I can, it's just so much. I can, say maybe those are one of the things that may have contributed to that. And also, my husband had multiple head injuries. Oh, wow. He had multiple head injuries, but he was a tough guy. Like, my husband, he had so many head injuries till this one last injury that he sustained in an accident, maybe about 4 months before the suicide. He was in a really bad car accident on 285 coming home from work. Yeah. And he was at 75 miles an hour. He hit someone. And he was on, I got to the scene of the accident, and he had a head injury. And the accident was so traumatic to where my husband he refused to go to see about himself, and my husband was very thoughtful. He would place himself in a way where he's, he like Superman, he would take a bullet for someone, know. Mm-hmm. And this accident, he hit someone at 75 miles an hour, and he did not know if that person survived. So I asked my husband to go and, seek help, and he refused. He said to me, how could I go and see about myself if I don't know if those people survived? So that last head injury, he changed, but I didn't notice the change because he was changing spiritually. Mm. So I mean, my husband, he was loud. Mm-hmm. I called him surround sound, but he was very loud, and but between turning his life over to Christ, and also that accident, I missed something, and I, sometimes I kind of blame myself because I didn't see, what was happening, because in my mind, I'm thinking that my husband, calm, I like very calm. I mean, he came all the way down, and he was unusually quiet, but I thought that he was quiet due to him turning his life over to Christ. Confirmation of his, that head injury came to me after the suicide. I went to my husband's job because, between the accident and the suicide, my husband was fired from his job. And when I had to go and pick up my husband's tools and things from that shop, his boss came to me, and offered up his condolences. But I had a question for him. I wanted to know, why did he get fired? And he said that his work kept coming back, kept coming back. And my husband, that was one of the things that my husband took pride in. He never had transmissions to come back. So when he told me that, I head out the door and I'm going about my way. And something just told me to go back in there and ask him, did his work start slowing down after the accident? And he said, as a matter of fact, he said it did. So I'm thinking, okay. So then he asked me if I thought that the accident affected his work. And I said, could be. I don't know. So
like you said, there's a lot of
yeah,
things that
there's so much.
Could have
There's so
played,
much.
and I'm sure few of them played into his psyche as to why he decided
Yes.
he no longer wanted to be here.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you that day? I mean, what was that like for you to be on the phone with your husband and him telling you that?
That day was it was rough. It was hard. My husband called me just as I was getting off from work, and he asked me, like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at the job. I'm on my way to the car. I'll call you, And he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. So I called him back. And just as I got on the phone with him, my job called me. So I tell my husband to hold on, let me see what they want, because I'm still in the parking lot. And I'm talking to my job. I really can't hear what he's saying on the other, to me, my job. Because my husband just started kind of like calling me back to back. So I told my job, listen, we'll deal with this later. My husband is calling me. Something must be going on. So I get back on the other line with my husband, and where are you? And I'm like, I'm still at the job. What's going on? And he was like, I need to talk to you. And I remember him saying that, well, when you get home, I won't be here. And I'm like, well, where are you going? And he said, I'm not going to be here. He, goes to tell me what I need to do with my life without him. And I'm thinking, like, where is this coming on? I said, Tim, are you planning on killing yourself? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, no, we can't do this. We absolutely cannot do this. And, he goes on, this is what I have to do.
Wow.
I put my car on the highway. I didn't care who I hit. I'm just trying to get home. And in the midst of me trying to get home, I think I worked on 54 Strickham in Lawrenceville. And I lived in Decatur, and it may have taken me about 12 minutes to get home.
Whoa.
I was running lights. I'm on the shoulder of 285. I'm just trying to get to my husband, but in the midst of me doing that, I'm trying to stay on the phone with him just so that I can get to him. I have talked him out of so many things, but he just...
Not this one.
He did not want me at the house.
So when you got home, what did you get home to?
I got home to the ambulance. I was actually on the phone. I was on the phone. I called my neighbor, and I told my neighbor to get to my house. I still had my husband on the other line. And I asked him to please get to the house. But I didn't want to let my husband go off the phone. So I get back on the other line, And he's telling me, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. And I'm like, no, Tim. I said, whatever this is, I said, we can talk about it. And he, this is what has to be done. So I can hear my neighbor. He was just as loud as my husband. I can hear my neighbor, Tim. And I'm steady talking to him. But at this point, I don't think my husband heard him. But I can hear him through the phone. And I can tell that he entered my home. And I'm just waiting because in the midst of my conversation with him, he told me that he was in the backyard. And he said that he was in the backyard because he didn't want me to sell our home. So I'm talking to him and I hear my neighbor calling my husband's name just as loud as I don't know what. And I'm thinking, God, he's here, and I know my neighbor and my husband were good friends, and he was an older gentleman, so my husband respected him. He valued, his advice or what have you. And I heard my neighbor one last time call my husband's name. And my husband, he asked me, who did you call? And I said, I didn't call anyone. Who did you call? And I'm saying, I didn't call anyone. And it's like I knew my neighbor was right there. I didn't know really if he was there or not. I just know that he was in the midst of, this chaos. So my husband shot himself while I was on the phone.
Oh my God.
And I waited a few minutes. I could still hear my neighbor. Now I hear my neighbor saying, Tim, what are you doing? Get up. So then I knew it was real because I can hear him. And he picked up the phone. And my neighbor, he picked up the phone and he said, hello. And I say, what's going on? And he said, Tim is laying here on the ground. I don't know. He's just laying here. And I said, call 911. I'm on my way. And he hangs the phone up and I called my mom and I couldn't get her on the line. I called my brother. I couldn't get him on the line.
Wow.
And by the time I made it to the house, I came on my street and the ambulance had my husband. They were working on him and there's so many people on my street. And by that time, I don't know who called my mother or who called my brother, but by the time I got there, they were there. I called so many people. But by the time I got home, the street was full. And they kept saying, when I parked my car in my driveway, they told me to get in the ambulance. I'm like, no, just take him, just get him to the hospital and I'll, follow behind. And they took him and got to the hospital and, just waiting.
That's a lot. And I know how difficult that was for you. Because me being in your life and hearing that news, I knew what it did to me. It was so hard. It's not many people that move me a whole lot, but that one really moved me. And so I know how difficult that was for you.
It was rough.
So how did you cope? What was your coping? How did you deal with that trauma to get to your place, your healing place? How did you navigate that?
It was rough. I remember I was doing this. I was running. Running from grief. I just didn't want to feel any worse than what I was already feeling. So I just ran. I left the house. I left the house for a couple of years. And I couldn't even pray for myself. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't do anything. I shut down.
Yeah.
I shut down for a while. And I mean, I had just like so many emotions. I was terrified, for one, to be left alone. I felt alone. I felt my husband was my protector. He was my spokesperson. And I didn't have that anymore. I didn't have that protection. And I left my house for maybe about 2 years, running from grief. And I remember Tyler Perry saying that it's going to be right there when you get back. That grief is going to be right there. And I finally decided that I was going to sit down and face what was. And I found myself at my mom. I was at my mom's, and I'm saying, like, I'm just tired of running. So I stayed with my mother, and I began to get back into the Word. I could not go to church.
How much time? Because I remember you moved a couple times. How many times did you move during that period?
I moved 3 times.
3 times.
3
'Cause
times.
I remember you moved in.
I was in my house when my husband died. I moved everything out of the house. The bedroom set, the living room set. I moved everything out of the house, bought me an air mattress, and I'm sleeping in my living room.
Oh, wow.
I can't even go back to my bedroom. And I decided that I could not find rest in my house anymore. So I moved into an apartment, and I stayed in that apartment for about a year. And after I moved out of the apartment, I moved back to my house. And I just could not. When I moved back to my house, I moved to one of the other bedrooms. And I just could not. I could not stay in the house we started out in the house together. We bought the house together. And it's just so much. But then I remember my husband saying that he didn't want me to sell the house, but I'm saying he did this at the house, regardless if it was on the inside or the outside. So I moved again. And when I moved again, I moved to my mother's. And that's where I began to heal. My healing started there with my mother.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you really had to take a minute and realize, you know what, I can't keep running from this. I have to face this so I can get to my next.
'Cause it was going to be right there.
Yeah.
So eventually I was going to have to face my grief. I was going to have to face it. So that's when I was at my mother's house for about a year. And my mother, she was trying to be there, be my support. But then she ended up spoiling me and making me fat. But it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. My mother, she was bringing breakfast to bed and, just really just trying to bring me back.
Fill that void.
Bring me back because I was totally, totally out of it.
Thank God for mamas.
Yeah.
Thank God for
Yeah.
mamas. Because I
My
know when I
mother,
walked through my situation,
yeah.
my mom was there too.
Yeah.
And it truly helped.
Yeah.
It truly helped.
She didn't know what to say,
Sometimes it's no
but
words.
she was there.
Awesome.
And I remember waking up one morning and I told my mom, I said, I think it's time for me to go home. And she looked at me like, really? And I said, yeah, I think I'm ready to go home. She said, you think you can do it? And I think I can. I painted my walls, redecorated my home. I did so much to my home to where I just could not live there. But after about 3 years, I decided to go home, and I've been there ever since. And I have my moments. I have my moments still. I still have things of my husband around the house that, you know, that really, really gets me through each day.
Okay. So you went back home, and what did you do to get to further heal yourself? Did you get back into church? Did you go to counsel?
I went to counseling. Well, let's start with Grief Share. I went to Grief Share about 3 times.
Okay.
And I guess if I was, my heart and my mind wasn't in it. I went to counseling. I just felt like there was no one in this world that I could talk to bring me through, because I felt like no one understood what I was going through. So I'm in therapy now, but before I could not talk to anyone about what I was going through, because I felt like no one understood what I was going through. I wanted to talk to people who was going through what I was going through. And granted, it wasn't it just wasn't there.
I got you.
Because suicide is something that we just don't talk about.
Yeah.
You know, we don't talk about it. But I met someone who was dealing with grief, you know, dealing with grief, you know, they lost their spouse, and that helped me.
Yeah.
That helped me to be able to talk about, you know, if I came to someone and wanted to talk about my husband every day, eventually they wouldn't want to hear that, because it's, you know, it's somber, it's, you know. So to speak with someone who was actually going through what I was going through, it was refreshing.
And that's good, because really and truly, that's why that answers a question as to why do we go through some of the things we go through? Why do God allow us to go through some of the things? Well, you will be there for somebody else.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
when we go through those things, then we get to help somebody else walk
Yes.
that process out. Because we don't know how to help somebody unless we have walked that.
Right.
You know, and we need to be able to identify with that person. We need to know that person understand our pain, because it better helps
Right.
us in our healing process.
Right.
Because I know for me that definitely was a thing, and I saw your struggle, I saw your pain, you know, all that you went through. But now, where are you?
Well, I'm back in church. I can function. I can function now in my day-to-day life. Still have my moments that I go through. You know, I am dating again, and my partner is very, very understanding. You know, when I want to talk about my husband, he listens. You know, he doesn't, you know, not want to, you know, allow me to express myself or to, just voice how I'm feeling. I can tell him that I miss my husband and he understands. So that my family has been a great support. My children, my mother, my sisters, my sisters have been, they stepped up and they stepped up
Awesome.
big time.
Awesome, because you needed that.
Yeah.
You needed that.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I had so many people who were in intercession for me when I couldn't. I absolutely could not. I could not pray.
Yeah.
I could not for years, and yeah, just having my family, my brother, my brother is awesome.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
family was very important to you in that
You have to
process.
surround yourself with
Yes.
people who are going to listen. In that situation, you find out who's who.
Absolutely.
You find out who's who. So I had some great support throughout the years. Yeah.
Awesome. So what is one thing that you would like to share with the audience? One thing, one suggestion, one encouragement that you would want to give to someone that has walked through this or is currently walking through it, and they may feel stuck, they may feel lost, they may feel unheard. What is one thing that you can share with them that can help them get to their next?
First and foremost is to put your trust in God, and to talk about it.
Yes.
Suicide is one of those things that we just don't talk about, and I learned when my husband passed away, I learned that was the second leading cause of death in Black men.
Really?
I did. I learned that.
I didn't know
So
that.
we need to talk about it.
I did not know that.
We need to talk about it. I was at home one day and received this delivery from my brother-in-law, and he sent me an article. And before my husband committed suicide, we was just going through the COVID pandemic, and before COVID, I learned that so many Black men committing suicide.
Wow. That is
So that's and since my husband passed away, I known of 4 other men, young men under 30, who have committed suicide.
wow.
And we just have to talk about it.
And I believe that's why you're here today. That was one of the
Yeah.
reasons you told me that, you want to do this because you feel like you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am so grateful for you coming and, being vulnerable, because I know that's not easy. I know it's, reliving something that was very traumatic for you and at times still can be. And so I so appreciate you coming and sharing
Thank
today.
you for having
And
me.
I pray that your story will help to bless someone, and that your story, that if any of you that's come across this podcast and you do want someone to talk to, and you do have questions, you do want someone to walk with you, I know that is something that she's very much interested in
Yes.
doing, and being able to be there, because sometimes you just need to know that someone is there. And so I didn't know that was the thing. And so
That is a thing.
I did not know that was a thing. So I'm sure many of you didn't know that this was a statistic for Black men taking their own lives. And so basically we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
We need to listen. We need to expose that this is something that is taking our young man's life.
Yeah. You have to break the stigma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, is there anything else you would like to share? No? No?
I think I'm all shared out. I'm so emotional right now.
And so you're dating again and you've met somebody that you're sharing your life with?
I am.
And that's bringing a ray of sunshine into your life?
That is, yeah, it's, I'm telling you, after being in the dark for so many years, it is refreshing. It is refreshing. And he's awesome.
Okay.
He is awesome.
See? Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I am so blessed to have you here today. I'm so blessed to hear your story. Even though I know some of it and I've walked through that with you, it is still such a blessing to hear you. And just even learning that piece of, because I truly didn't know that Black men was taking their life like that. So I'm glad that I know that now. So if you guys are seeing this podcast, and you guys have been through this, I pray that you will keep your head up. I pray that you will get the help that you need.
Yes.
I pray that you will talk to people, do not keep it in. And I pray that you will have the courage and the strength to trust God. Trust God in the midst of this hardship.
Yes.
Trust God, even though you don't feel like it, even though you don't understand why you're walking through this. Trust God that He will see you through this process. Yes. Just like He has seen her through this process.
Yes,
she's back in her home. Yes. She didn't think she could have lived there anymore, but she's living home. And now she's started on a new journey in her life. God is faithful, even when it seems like it's impossible. Even when it seems like you're in your darkest moment, God is able to pull you through. All right? So guys, until next time, let's keep talking about it. All right? Bye-bye.